Chuck Schumer has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, approval rating of any elected official in the United States. We definitely know, according to Pew Research and CNN, that he has the lowest approval rating of any Senate Democrat in history. And it's not just him, right? Confidence in the Democratic Party is at a tremendous low. We know that 70% of Democrats believe that their own representatives in Congress are not doing enough to oppose Donald Trump. More Republicans have a positive view of their leadership than Democrats do of theirs. And I know we've had some reporting from Under the Desk News and a couple of other folks that they claim that Chuck Schumer didn't have a hand in what these 8 surrender Dems did to us to reopen the government, betray everybody, and basically get absolutely nothing. None of the demands of the Democrats were met, right? It was a complete and total surrender on behalf of the Democrats, failing all of us mightily. And folks said, oh, Chuck Schumer didn't know anything about this. His hand wasn't in it. They did this behind his... Sure. That's why all 8 of them either are not going to be up for re-election or will not be up for re-election until at least 2028. This was carefully orchestrated. And the fact that we are seeing so many corporate establishment Democratic senators not coming out and condemning this action. Sure, they voted no, but we're hearing from several of them, like, we just need to move along. We don't want infighting. We can't have conflict. The right answer here is not to criticize the surrender Dems, and it's definitely not to go after Chuck Schumer. Let's just sweep it under the rug and move along. Yeah, we're going to try and save the ACA. How? How are you going to do that? Y'all gave up every piece of leverage that you had. So anyway, okay, before I start ranting, we know that there are far more Senate Democrats who were in support of what happened. It's just that they didn't have to vote yes because 8 of them fell on the sword. 8 of them who are either not running for re-election or are not up for re-election for several years, so they think the voters will forget. This was a coordinated move by Senate Democrats. Not all of them, but far more than 8. And it would be bizarre for the leadership of the Senate Democrats to not have had a hand in this, to not have known what was going to go down until just a couple of days beforehand. And let's pretend that Chuck Schumer didn't know that this was going to happen. Okay, then he is wholly inept as leader. If 8 members of his party, plus probably several others, were going against what he wanted, and he could not whip them to vote as a bloc on behalf of the American people, when Democrats in the House, when Democratic leadership, including the DNC, governors around the country, the American voters all said, don't do this. If Chuck Schumer couldn't stop 8 people under his leadership from doing it, he shouldn't be leading. So Indivisible has launched indivisible2026.org, but there's also this call for all of us to put pressure on our Democratic senators. We need at least one of them to come out and say, Chuck Schumer needs to step down. I'm calling for a vote. I think it's something like 10 of our senators have to write a letter and demand that there be a vote for new leadership. And Cory Booker vague booked about this yesterday on the Book of Faces. He was like, oh yeah, we need new leadership, but he didn't come out and say, Chuck Schumer, resign. And we could talk about how Cory Booker is one of the problem Democrats. He has voted for so many things that Trump has wanted this year, including nominees, including bills that Trump wanted to pass. Like, Cory Booker ain't it. He ain't it, y'all. But he tries to make these political moves. And if he is going to call for Chuck Schumer to resign, then that's great. We need at least one Senate Democrat to step out and be the first, because I think there's a lot of bystander effect going on. Nobody wants to be the first one to come out and call for it, despite the fact that I think something like a dozen members of the House, multiple grassroots organizations have officially called for Schumer to step down. We have yet to see a single Democratic senator who is willing to take that political risk. But once one of them does, I think many, many more will follow. That's why it's crucial that we continue to keep up the public pressure. We continue to call our senators and say, we need you to do this. That Chuck Schumer is not equipped to meet the moment. This was devastating for the party, for our country. There must be new leadership. Now, Indivisible has been calling for Chuck Schumer to resign since March. I also have been calling for Chuck Schumer to resign since March. And now we are seeing many other elected officials get on board with that. We are seeing multiple other organizations, 5051, MoveOn.org, tons of others calling for Chuck Schumer to resign. So it's important that we call just once a day, send an email or call once a day your Democratic senator and say, I would like you to ask for Chuck Schumer's resignation as Senate Minority Leader. That's it. A quick phone call, 15 seconds, quick email. I want you to demand Chuck Schumer step down. There is no Senate Democrat who's going to have the balls to do that unless we push and push and push them. I'm so sorry that we have to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire because they aren't willing to do what is necessary unless we drag them kicking and screaming. But that's where we're at. Again, I think there are some good Senate Democrats. I'm a big fan of Jeff Merkley, who is one of my senators. I think that he is a man with very robust ethics, and he is fighting very hard for the American people. And I'm sure he did not want this shutdown ending to happen the way that it did. But I think that then brings up the question of, if there are Senate Democrats who are willing to make this call and we get enough votes, like who would be the next leader of the Senate Democrats? What do you think? Who should be leader? In an ideal, magical fairyland, I think Jeff Merkley should be the leader, but I also recognize that he's too progressive for most Senate Democrats. And actually, I forget if it was Ezra or Leah said that in the Indivisible call this week too. Like, no, Jeff Merkley, he's too progressive. He's too far left. He doesn't take any APAC money. And I agree, as good as we know that Jeff would be for the country, and as much as I think he is kind of a model of what our Senate Democrats should be, I don't think that he could get the votes. So this was one of the questions in the Indivisible What's the Plan call yesterday, Thursday. And there was a lot of speculation. People were typing in the chat who they thought should be the leader of the Senate Democrats. Who can meet the moment? And Ezra was saying, well, Senator Schatz from Hawaii is kind of being groomed for that position. So he's the likely person to step in if Schumer steps down. And right away I was like, no, I'm not down with that. I realize I don't get to choose, but I'm like, Schatz has been groomed to be Schumer's successor. He is part of that same machine of Democrats who do not understand the severity of the moment. They think that this is politics as usual. They underestimate what the Republicans are doing. They don't understand that this is a fascist takeover. They are in their little Beltway bubble and they are deluding themselves about what is going on. So I'm not sure that somebody who has been groomed for years to be Schumer's successor should be Schumer's successor. I think people in the chat were saying Elizabeth Warren or Chris Murphy, and Elizabeth Warren is also not going to get the votes. I don't know if Chris Murphy could rally enough votes. There are a lot of awfully conservative Senate Democrats. I know they would say that they are centrist, they're moderate, but they're conservative. They're very much pro-capitalist. They're very much about protecting corporations above doing what is necessary. And again, how much of that is because they are selling single stocks and making millions and millions? How much of that is because of their direct conflicts of interest, because they're being lobbied and bought and paid for by big business, by billionaires? One of the names that got tossed out during this conversation is Chris Van Hollen. Yeah, okay, I could be down with that. He's really made some dramatic steps early in the game, right? He went to El Salvador before anybody else. He has made a vocal stand on behalf of democracy. And that's what we really need. We need fighters. We don't need more milquetoast, lily-livered spinelessness like we've seen from Chuck Schumer. We need aggressive leadership that can whip the Democrats to vote as a bloc, and somebody who understands what's happening, somebody who understands that this is not politics as usual. This is the Republicans having fully transformed themselves into a party of fascism. This is the Republicans trying to destroy our democracy, and that requires fighters with a spine, with conviction, with tenacity to help partner with us, the American people, to save us from falling into fascism. So who do you think? Who do you think should be leader of the Senate Democrats? And how is it that we, the people, can use our collective power to get Chuck Schumer removed? Because it's going to take massive public pressure. These guys in the Senate, they don't want to buck the system. They don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to piss off foreign and corporate money. They love to protect each other, and we need a couple of them to peel off. Because once they do, I think a lot more of them will get behind this move. It's going to require us public pressure, call, email every single day. Until it happens, we're calling every day.